everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Frame by Frame podcast. I'm Zach Orleski, and I'm joined by William Carson. Cross Preston is unavailable this evening. This is also the final episode of our first season, and after which we'll be taking a short hiatus and doing a bit of planning and restructuring as far as how things are run with our social media stuff, I think is a good way to put it. I don't know, Will, are we planning on doing video or live?
That's a conversation that I am ready to fight for during our planning weeks.
Yeah.
So maybe.
Yeah. Good. All right. But yeah, today, our episode, we are rounding off our season by discussing what we learned from running a podcast, or even since starting our podcast, and touching on quite a few different aspects of our probably our personal and professional lives that come along with the podcast. Because again, we have a topic I know you want to talk about, Will. It's having the weekly time to talk about your industry to people who may have a better understanding.
Absolutely, yeah. A couple weeks into recording regularly, I realized, wow, before this, I didn't have regular conversations with people in the UX or product design industries. And now that I'm kind of used to this is pretty nice. I wasn't really talking with anybody in my personal life outside of this. And so just I get to feel like I'm a larger part of this community now that I'm talking about it. I'm also able to speak about it more clearly because I get weekly practice, which I didn't realize was going to be super duper important going into this, because now I can speak with other people. If I have meetings with a stranger and I'm meeting them for the first time, trying to talk about something design related, I'm realizing now that I can be way more confident going into those combos.
How would you say it's helped the learning curve? I look at it as kind of learning a language. You're using what you know regularly. You're talking about it. You're speaking on it, and so I think it helps the details sink in. But as far as learning new techniques or being able to speak knowledgeably to peers and people maybe you're mentoring or that have questions, are you more comfortable now doing all those things? Or
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think I've mentioned this on the show before, but before I started my UX bootcamp, I had just done part-time work, bouncing around here and there, trying different things. Nothing particularly professional. So my vocabulary didn't need to be very, very high class, I guess. So whenever I did try to speak about this stuff with another person, I realized I was skipping over my words a lot, and I just didn't feel comfortable. And I guess the biggest sign that I've improved my ability to even speak about all this was that I had a meeting the other day with the people in charge of the Denver UX newbies meetup group. And I told them, I'm just not very good at community management. And they kind of laughed and responded to me hey, the way you talk, I don't understand how you suck at community management. I said that I suck first. They weren't just saying I suck. But that kind of stood out to me.
It's that selling yourself short thing. A lot of people don't apply to certain jobs because they think they won't get in. It's well, you don't know unless you try, and maybe you would get it because you are you're turning yourself down before you even take the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
No, I found the weekly convo has also helped me because I do a lot of presentations or speaking at work, and I've been doing more and more workshops, and right now I'm running our community of peers because we're integrating a cross-disciplinary design system. So it's really helped me find words quicker and not stumble so much, or to really feel confident that I know what I'm discussing, or at least sound confident, because now I'm used to getting to speak.
Right, yeah. It's funny you bring that up. So in my personal life, I dread the idea of interrupting people. I will not do it. I wait for a long gap between speech and other people's conversation before I jump in. And that's actually another big thing I learned from just talking about this every week, because we run no videos, we just go black screen for the three of us. And in case you guys remember, for the first couple episodes, I did not speak very much because I was very, very careful not to interrupt anybody or trip over anybody else. So just in getting this experience, I've become a little more pushy for myself in conversations when you can't see body language, which is definitely helping me in the boardroom, I guess I'll call it, with stakeholders and my boss and everything. Crazy.
It is. It's actually kind of funny because if I've listened back to a couple parts of some of our other episodes, and you can really see like over time how everybody's pattern has changed. You've become more vocal, which is great. Um, it's super. Yeah, I remember the first couple episodes, you were super quiet, and then it was like, what? I can't even remember what episode it was, but it was just like you popped out of your shell, and it
Mm-hmm.
was time.
Like I think maybe episode 3 or 4, there was a topic I was especially psyched about. So I think I was like, all right, I'm owning this one. This one has to be. I need a lot of speaking time for this one. I have a lot to say. Forget what it
But
was.
I'll have to look back. Yeah, that's no, it's I find episodes I'm really excited for. I sometimes I actually the one episode we did, can't remember his name now. I'm embarrassed that I can't remember his name. We did an episode with somebody, and I think he's a teacher as well. Maybe he's an instructor. Oh, what was his name? White, something White. Anyway, yeah. So I enjoyed what he had to say, and I wanted to learn more about it. And you and Cross were just asking questions, and I was more than happy to just sit there and listen that day. Like it was. Some episodes are fun. Some episodes I'm really in on as far as questions to people when we've had guests, but it's because I maybe didn't do a lot of background research on them. So it's fun to find out that information. But I also
Mm-hmm.
like interviewing people, and this has helped with that as far as like research and stuff. I like interviewing our users. I like interviewing people that are testing. It's even more fun now because I have to think about questions a little bit more than than I did before, and so now uh,
Right.
it doesn't take me as long to think of those type of questions. I think now, like your brain becomes more in tune to like, oh, that just popped in my head. We're gonna write that down and save that. That's a good one.
Right. Yeah. And after doing so many episodes, you can kind of even fall into the trap of asking similar questions to guests or similar questions on a topic, such as like, oh, how did you learn the skill? Like that's a question that could be asked in pretty much any episode, and eventually it gets boring, and you realize like, all right, how do I frame this in a much more entertaining manner, or how do I ask it such that it's more specific and geared towards one specific path of learning? Um, it ends up forcing us to flex our imaginations quite a bit more.
It's just another step in the creativity chart. Speaking of guests and stuff, how did you find the podcast has helped your networking and relationships so far?
Oh, immensely. So before doing this podcast, I didn't think at all that I could just message some of the people that we brought on, like just DM some of the people. I'm not going to bring up individual names. You guys can look at past episode titles just to look at if you want. But there are some relationships now that I thought I would never have access to. And it's funny getting to speak with some of the people who maybe you think are way ahead of you in the process or like a higher status than you or whatever. Getting the chance to talk to them, you realize like, oh, this is just a normal person like me too. They're just ahead in the process. That's all it is.
It's
And
that
so
that
it's
rock
crazy.
star syndrome goes away. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
not untouchable. They're no different than you. They just have been around the block a little longer, I think.
Mm-hmm. And then another thing that happens once you start to understand that, where did that thought go? Once you start to understand that, you realize like, oh, maybe other relationships can be developed quicker than I thought as well. I just need to figure out how to ask for their time appropriately. um, and you feel more comfortable reaching out to higher and higher perceived status people, which is which is awesome for your network because then you get access to their second level connections as far as LinkedIn goes.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
There's some people that I really like their content. A lot of it is like design system stuff, and they're people I followed for a while, and it's like in that niche area, these people are like little rock stars, but they're seriously like just normal people. But I don't know why I get so nervous sometimes. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna send him a
Mhm.
message. I have a question about this. I read uh, Brad Frost. He's written a book, Atomic Design, and I was just in a conference that he did over, the future of design systems and like what could happen with AI as far as design systems. It was super
Mhm.
interesting, but people like him, I would have never before thought I could just reach out and send an email. And after I'd read his book, I sent him an email, and then I think I emailed him again one other time, and I I don't know how it got brought up, but I mentioned that I was going to config, and then he was like, I might be out of the country at that point. He's like, but if it fits, we can meet up. And I was like, oh my god, that's like amazing. I
That'd
would
be
like to,
super cool.
yeah. But yeah, just some of the people like they're really no different than you or I. They just maybe they got their stuff together a little sooner. Who knows?
Mhm.
But yeah, why not reach out to these people? I think that's one thing with the podcast initially was like a big goal is like help people network, help people get into the design community as a whole. And then yeah, you have these weird moments of like, oh man, that's a rock star. And then you talk to him and you're like, that guy could have been somebody like I went to school with. Like they're no
Mhm.
different than I am. They're just, they've either been in that field or they have a genuinely original idea about something, so they make it known.
Mhm. Right. It's funny. The another like relationship you kind of deepen is with yourself almost once you start putting your own voice out there publicly in an industry. Because Zach Cross and I, we were all from boot camp first. Of course, Zach and Cross first had some digital design background already. I didn't, but before getting the chance to speak with each other and with our guests and everything every week, like I felt kind of like low man on the totem pole for the industry, and like I maybe didn't have full permission to speak publicly yet. But it's funny because after you spend a couple weeks doing it, and you realize like, all right, I should prepare at least a little for this. And then once you do it enough on a regular basis, you're like, oh wait, I'm kind of just sick of feeling like I'm not ready to talk about this. I'm over it now. I feel ready. I'm confident now. It's funny how that relationship with yourself builds too, to the point where you're confident, and then people who are new and still unconfident, they can kind of see it and try to hope to get that confidence one day too.
Oh, I totally agree with you. It's yeah, it's I always since we started doing the podcast, even before that, I think a couple people actually had talked to you previously, and then they also got a hold of me via LinkedIn and had a couple questions, and I'm more
Hmm.
comfortable answering questions from people regardless of what it is in design. But if it's design related, I have no problems just answering people. Like it's not a problem for me if they're like, what would you tell a junior designer that's trying to get in? And I was like, honestly, right now I'm not going to like dash anybody's hopes, but like you really need to take this time that you have and try not to be discouraged and actually just put in work. Like just learn something, learn
Hmm.
anything. It doesn't matter if you have time, just learn that extra. If you have to work another job, I mean, you're doing the sushi train,
Right.
so it's like, yeah, work what you have to work, but if you're passionate about it, keep doing it. Don't stop, because that you might have one weird case study that you thought was a great idea, and that might be the thing that kicks a recruiter or a hiring manager into being like, "Oh, that's an original thought. Like we need that. That is we need more of that. But I think yeah, doing the podcast, I without doing the podcast, I don't know if I would have as quickly been so comfortable not really giving advice, but just giving like what I learned. Here's what I learned. This is what I know. This is my exact knowledge of what I have. You're welcome to have it. Like,
Mhm.
just take it.
Right.
I don't care.
And it's funny too, because like we don't go into these episodes thinking we're experts on any subject. It's more like just here's what I feel now. Here's what I've experienced. I'm not claiming to be an expert, but someone can learn from thee. And so just the confidence in not being an expert is massive for what's developed here.
I think that's one of the biggest things in anybody's career at that point. Like, don't don't pretend to know everything. Actually, just highlight the fact that I don't know this and I want to know, so I'm asking, or I'm giving you what my opinion is, and please tell me the opposite if that's the case, or give me more information so I can better inform my knowledge of the subject.
Mm-hmm. And that can kind of be done through like expanding our knowledge can really be done through any sort of like passion project. And for this, of course, this is a passion project. Um, and that was actually our next bullet point we wanted to talk about. Um, I've realized that through doing this, I can open up certain conversations that maybe I didn't think were possible before. Like for example, if I want to talk to like Sean Evans from Hot Ones, in case anyone watches that YouTube show, like I'm probably not getting a response. But before I had done this podcast, I would be at like absolute 100% chance of not getting a response. At least now I have a conversation starter. So this has been like super helpful for knowing what a passion project can get me. Just these new potential contacts, which is crazy.
Um, it's actually funny. I think we touched a little bit on that when we were talking before our show. There's another. I remember his name now, and it's Nardwar. Do you know this guy? He's got videos all
No.
over YouTube. He asks some of the best interview questions to musicians, and they're crazy. I think I told you about that a little bit before our show, but I aspire to be able to ask questions the way he does. I don't think that's possible for me. But yeah, again, it's that's a learned skill, and it's something that has only improved with this. But um, I, yeah, I don't know. The podcast at this point has also helped me see places where I could improve. Like as a passion project, it's really opened up spaces where I was like, wow, that is not a strong point for me. What can I do to
Mm-hmm.
improve
Right.
that? Because it'll only improve the rest of my myself at that point. Yeah, because I'm better at talking to people now. I'm better at communicating points to people, or at least being open to any opposing view, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Being open to being told you're wrong. Here's why.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the hardest part about being a designer is you're told no, you're wrong, or this isn't what I want. I don't like it. You get a lot of negative feedback in this career, in any design career, like even graphic design. That was rough, and you know, design school in general or
Mm-hmm.
art school in general is rough on a creative person. So it helps build thick skin, but you have to be thick skinned. And I think the podcast is good for that too, because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you speak your point, and if you don't know what you're talking about, or you're maybe wrong on something, please like point it out to me. Otherwise, I'm gonna be, yeah, I won't know, and I'll just keep repeating the same mistake. So,
Mm-hmm. I like what you said about helping us build thick skin through this because like once you enter the public sphere, of course anyone on LinkedIn is technically in the public sphere, but once you start to put more of yourself out there, like you can't put more of yourself out there without also being okay with the potential negative repercussions, such as like anyone could just comment on an episode post on LinkedIn like, oh, you guys are awful and here's why. Like we have to be comfortable with that, or at least we need to be able to not explode after reading something like that.
Yeah, you shouldn't start shaking. And if you start shaking the minute a comment bothers you, it's time to take a breath and just kind of think about it. Like it's one person's opinion, and if we're in talking design of any kind, one person's opinion should not change your product. It should not change your design. It should not change anything about your research until you have more than one opinion.
Mhm.
Like,
Right.
so I mean, I guess if you're on LinkedIn and you have 10,000 people telling you you're an idiot, like, well, there's your data. Take it. So yeah, I don't know. I think I never really think about the public space thing when it comes to the podcast. Like that's not really a concern of mine. Like I don't know, maybe trolls just don't bother me that much. Like I just don't care.
Or
It's
maybe we
it's
haven't said anything to get canceled yet.
yeah, whatever. I don't know. I'm counting my days. Like there will be a day where I get canceled. I mean, if I think about it, um, I saw something the other day. Do you know the show Wonder Years? You probably don't.
Does not ring a bell.
Well, to tell you the truth, my dog is not named after Winnie the Pooh. It's Winnie Cooper, the girl from Wonder Years. So anybody who's listening, if you recognize that, cheers. It's great. Yeah, no, it's super old. But when that show took place, when I was watching it as a kid, it was like 30 years or 40 years before. And I saw a post the other day that's like, when you watch this, it was based in this time period. And that's the equivalent of you being the age you are now, watching a show about when you were growing up in that that age. And I was like, holy shit, okay.
Yeah, I found it on Google. It looks like it aired from the late 80s to the early 90s, and it looks like it depicts life in the 60s and 70s.
Yes. And so I'm currently that guy narrating his life in the past.
I love it. I'm trying to think what that show was for me. I was born in 1997, but of course, I don't have memories of the 90s. So let's see. All I got are the early 2000s TV shows.
Oh no.
I watched a lot of old Cartoon Network stuff. So Boomerang, like those
I
old cartoons they used to play, love that stuff.
Cartoon Network. The last thing I ever saw on Cartoon Network was I think Johnny Bravo. No, that's false.
Awesome.
Archer, because I love Archer.
Gotcha.
Do you know the show Frisky Dingo?
No.
Oh my god, it could be viewed as terrible, but if you like Archer, like it's the original version of Archer, and then they got canceled, and so they're this is hilarious. Their last episode after they got canceled, they smashed in the entire rest of the season into that one episode. So it was just
That's awesome.
chaos. Like the entire episode from start to finish was chaos because you're like, so much has happened right now. I have no idea what's happening right now. And then after
Mm-hmm.
it aired, they're like, well, we didn't have a choice. We were getting canceled, and we had already done the work. So
Mm-hmm. Still going to pay the voice actors and the writers and everything, of course.
yep, just smashed it all into 45 minutes. But no, that was pretty good for Cartoon Network. We When I was a kid, we had like Beavis and Butthead.
Mm-hmm.
How old was I then? I don't even remember. That was 90. I don't even know. I'm going to sound really old right now. Maybe it was 94.
They still did reruns for that when I was watching.
Dude, I was a kid when Pauly Shore was like top of his game. Do you know Pauly Shore?
Uh, is that Jersey Shore stuff?
No, Pauly Shore is a American comedian, and the Rooster is what they used to call him. You'll have to Google it. You'll recognize him. I think he was in the no, not in the army now. He had to join the army because whatever. I don't know. It was a really weird thing. But what was the other one? Son-in-law and Biodome. Oh, I know you know Biodome.
Yeah, I have it up on Google. Yes, in the army or into the army, whatever you said. Biodome. He was in a Goofy movie. Love that.
Wait, he was in Goofy movie?
Let me see which one it was. Yeah, I think the original 1995 Goofy movie.
Wow. All right. I did not know that. Yeah. So that tells you how old I am. But
Not too old.
no, no. I say I hit the best time because I still like my grandparents had a rotary phone. Our house always had a house phone, and not one you could take around the house with you. Like you were coiled up on the
Hmm.
kitchen counter talking on the
Right.
phone. Um, I remember when the internet was a thing.
Hmm.
Pre boom, like AOL, America Online, the original stuff. Man, that was yeah. But it was a great time because it was like, okay, I grew up with the actual floppy disks, like the old school, like big square
Right.
wax ones, not the little plastic ones. These are big black squares, and our printer had the paper with the knobs in it when you wanted to print something, and so it had to like
Hmm.
pull the paper through with these knobs. But then I watched stuff go to like modern day phones. Everything's wireless. I can throw my phone on a pad and it charges it along with my
Hmm.
headphones. And when I was a kid, you had to stretch extension cords through the house to run your Nintendo. Like, so no, it's a fun time. I really that's one reason I liked digital design as far as like products and UX UI. But it's also one reason I'm so interested in finding and taking projects that are real world UX, like Disney World. Like, I want to design people's waiting experience to make them forget they're waiting for 4 hours
Hmm.
to ride a roller
Right.
coaster. I mean, that doesn't sound too exciting, but really, you get to talk to a lot of people and find out what they hate, and then be like, well, how can we get them to not think about that? Okay, we'll have like a speed pass, or we'll have little TVs here and there with our characters on them for our park. Yeah, they just figure out ways to do it. And to me, that's super
Hmm.
interesting. Or for do you know Meyer grocery store?
I don't think so. No. Is
Um,
that a
it's
Midwest
probably
thing?
Michigan. Yeah, it's probably Michigan. It's started in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But like those stores, along with Walmart, was another big one. They hired like at the time it wasn't considered UX, but it was like a customer experience designer, and they would come into the stores and be like, "Well, here's how you can um, get your customers to buy the things you want at the price point you want, and how you can encourage this behavior and that behavior." And then restaurants started doing the same thing, and so
That's cool.
places that want you to stay play relaxing, but not too relaxing because you'll get sleepy music.
Hmm.
The lighting is always not overly bright because they want you to be relaxed when you're in there. And fast food places are always very fluorescent. It's loud. They don't care.
Right.
That doesn't matter. They don't want you to be there all day eating because you know, you're there making a mess. So just get out.
And they
Um,
have way more customers coming in too. So get the hell out.
Yeah, and stores will do that too. Like when you're at malls, the shopping experience in each store can be completely different based on music or the aesthetics of the store. But some are promoting that you are in there, are attracted to something, but kind of just want to get out of there, and you're willing to just pay the money for that thing you saw. And so it's almost like a rush buy, and so the buyer's guilt comes later. So there's a lot of human like yeah, like psychological human behavior involved in some of these, but it's super interesting. And yeah, it's something I don't think we've ever actually talked about on our podcast. But
Yeah, I don't
no,
think so.
so the podcast has actually helped open me up to stuff like that because yeah, I talk to so many people now, and you hit both ends of the spectrum. You have the product managers now that they're older than I am. A lot of them are, and um, so they're here with technology change too, but they're on that end of the spectrum where it's like, okay, you can manage the product, but you don't know what's coming. Like you're not on top of it. Maybe I don't know how they
Mm.
make those decisions, but that's my feeling because I know there will become a point where I would say in my 40s or 50s where you do start to lose touch, like with like my kids are growing up with when they even knew how to like pick icons on my phone out for they have this German bedtime show that they watch, and they know what that icon looks like, but they know how to work a freaking iPhone. And when I was a kid, like we had to figure out code. So our experience is
Mhm.
different. They're better with interface interactions, whereas our generation knew, that
How to
side of
use the
technology. Yeah,
keypad texting mechanisms 1 through 0.
exactly. Yeah. And everything else. And so, I think getting to talk to all these people and the podcast opening me up to, reaching out to people and getting information. It's a really cool experience to be the age I'm at because I feel like we were in the thick of a technology explosion and now we're in the start of a new one. And that's where I worry
Right.
that in my
Mhm.
50s I might fall behind because AI. And I mean, okay, so I want to put one thing out here. The uh the Apple Vision, it's cool. I really like it. I'm a big fan of the AR technology. Like I really think it can do wonders. But I also think it should never replace what we currently have that takes over our life, which is the phone. Like I think people running around with goggles on is something out of Wally to me. Like we're
Mhm.
all going to live on a spaceship and be fed through straws, and uh, the we're going to trash our planet and disappear into space where we become space blobs living on a rocket ship and everything's done for us. Like I don't want that experience for
Mhm.
my kids.
Yeah.
Um, but maybe that's where I'm out of touch. Maybe that's where we're going. Is everything will be AR. Like you will have glasses that look like normal glasses, so you don't have a headset. But yeah, the implications are a little scary. I'm a big fan of helping progress in that direction, just because I'm
Yeah.
interested in those things. Like
Mhm.
to me, that's exciting. Those are crazy problems to solve or even be involved in thinking about. Like here's one for you. I was talking to a back end developer who has knowledge of this, but they're building a computer security system that functions based on the human immune system. And they have actual like biologists helping engineers design the system. So it recognizes when external things come in, so a virus,
Hmm.
and it can recognize those and attack it.
Nice.
But yeah, so stuff like that is crazy to me. Like you're modeling a computer system off of the human immune system. So even though ours is flawed, you're still going to model a computer after that system, which obviously it can be done more efficiently. Maybe they're working on genetic changes we can do to function like a computer, but still human. I don't know. But I don't want to think about that stuff.
Not until it's on our doorstep.
Oh God, please no. Yeah. No, so no, but without those connections with people, I don't think I would have found myself trying to get involved in stuff like that,
Mhm. I
if
always
that makes
thought
sense.
that just high tech stuff was super duper cool. Like I love any and all of the cyberpunk video games that have come out. I'm not talking just CD Projekt Red. I mean like Deus Ex and that stuff. I'm a cheater. I should be talking about Star Trek as well, but I haven't watched it, so I'm a jerk there. But I've always loved that stuff, so that's probably how I got into here. Um,
I mean, you did aerospace stuff for a bit, so
that's true.
obviously you were on a. You at least know who William Shatner is, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, good. Yeah, then you're all right. You still qualify for Star Trek. I actually
Cool.
I was never a huge Star Trek fan. I know a lot of people are going to boo me on that. It wasn't that I didn't like it; it just wasn't my preferred poison as far as TV.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was the I was the Comedy Central if I could get my hands on it without,
Yeah.
yeah. So
I watched Comedy Central in late elementary school and early middle school when I would get home before my parents when on demand TV was a thing. I
oh
didn't have to
yeah,
wait for any shows to be on. I would just come home, open up the guide, go to on demand. Oh, a new episode of South Park? I'm on it.
man, that was life changing when we were kids. The What was that, DVR?
Mm-hmm. TiVo? Oh my God.
Yeah, TiVo. People went nuts.
We keep
Yeah,
doing
we
this thing where we try to hit a 20 or 30 minute episode mark.
for TiVo.
and for our episodes, and then we end up crushing it.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry.
All good. I love
No,
this
that's
anyway.
but yeah, no TiVo's man, that was
Game
all the
changer.
rage. You know, honestly, somebody the other day said something about Blockbuster, and I never
Hmm.
realized Blockbuster died.
What?
Like I knew I to me it wasn't like earth shattering. Like it's almost like one of those things where it's like, oh, they went out of business. Well, they'll come back as something
Mm-hmm.
else, but they never came back. I think that's the thing is I never grieved for Blockbuster
Mm-hmm.
on the weekends to go rent video games or whatever because I my brain never took note that they were never coming back. It was like, oh, yeah, tough times, I guess, you know?
Funny.
Yeah, because at that time too, Netflix was like, get your 5 DVDs in the mail and then mail them back in 7 days. And it was like, why wouldn't I just walk to the nearest Blockbuster?
Mm-hmm. I guess
But
Redbox kind of scratched the same itch, but a
oh yeah,
smaller
yeah,
selection.
I forgot about Redbox.
I had a 7-Eleven within walking distance from the home I grew up in, and they had Redbox, so that was perfect for me.
Yeah, that was like that was like the introduction to. I think that's like the start of when Netflix really went there because it was like, okay, Redbox is kind of a vending machine. Okay, we're going to make a
Mm-hmm.
vending machine online that you can just watch any movie you want.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So good on them. They took out Blockbuster bastards. But nobody's taken out Little Caesars Pizza. That'll never go away.
I hope not. Oh my god.
That was the thing when we were kids. I mean, the Detroit Red Wings. I think they are the Little Caesars Detroit Red Wings now. That's really depressing. They were always a huge sponsor, and I think they're actually owned by the same people. So, anytime you buy a Little Caesars pizza, guys, you're supporting the Detroit Red Wings. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
So,
Um, we were talking before the episode about bullet points of what we learned, and my gag answer was, I know that there are exactly 8 hours between Denver's time and Germany's time.
yeah,
A big thing.
it's that's important to know, and it's also good to know that because my wife and I were discussing it, and she's like, "How far?" It was the other day. I was going to call my oldest sister, and she lives in Chicago. My younger sister's
Mhm.
in Michigan, and she was like, "Well, why don't you just call your older sister?" And I was like, "Because if I call her right now, it's like 5 in the morning, whereas the other one is a school teacher, and she'll be awake like." And she's also another hour, so it's like 7 a.m. I can still talk to her. She doesn't have classes or anything.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I explained that to her, and she's like, "Wait, what?" And I was like, "Yeah, my sister in Michigan. If you cross that little tip
Mhm.
where we start to meet Illinois on the lake, that little corner, there's the time change. Like as soon as you cross that section, you're an hour back." And she's like, "That's so stupid." And I'm like, "You you
You're telling
drive
me.
you drive a couple states more, and you're back another couple hours. Like
Hmm.
it's just how it works."
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's good to know. And again, we were talking about a 30-minute episode. The other thing I did learn about this from this podcast experience is time consciousness because I have none. We we talk frequently on this show about my AI embedded in my brain, but it's actually a cell phone that wants to die because it's got so many calendar apps on it. Because I need reminders regularly, and so with the show, it's kind of helped because I try to at least know what we're doing, and when we don't know what we're doing ahead of time or far enough ahead of time, it's a little nerve wracking at first because I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
what am I going to talk about? What's going on? I also lose track sometimes in the middle of a question or answering something. I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but I'll just go. Um, but yeah, no, I have become more time conscious. Like as far as like, okay, I know we said 30 minutes. We're at 40 minutes in my brain. That's like, oh, that's like 2 minutes over. We're fine. But no, I think I had told you before. in the States, there were times where I'm supposed to be somewhere, and it's not that I didn't want to see these people and that I didn't want to go to this thing. It's that in the process of getting from point A to point B, I got distracted somewhere and time went out the window until my
You went to
phone
point C
was,
instead. Hmm.
yeah, until my phone was exploding and people are like, "Are you coming? Like, what is going on?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah." And then you look at the time and you're like, "Yeah, I'll be there in like 5 minutes." And then an hour later you show up and they're like, "Dude, what is going on?" And you're like, "Yeah, I had to stop for gas. And then this was going on. And then I got on my phone and I was talking to them." And it's like,
Hmm.
it happens very easily. That's why I have so many reminders on my phone on top of all my stuff I have going on at the same time. It's a lot of my wife yelling at me to turn the damn thing off.
Your poor wife.
Yeah, because she'll like within a 2 hour period, I'll have a bunch of alarms go off, and I turned off the tone, so now it just vibrates. But if my phone's sitting on something, it like reverberates through that room, and she's just
And then
like,
it's
"What the hell?"
alarming. Hmm.
Yeah, she's like, "What is going on?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is my calendar." She's like, "Would you just turn it off? You don't need it." And I'm like, "I do actually, because right now I have to go do this. Otherwise, I wouldn't have got it done." Yeah, it's it's helped a lot. We still go over our time, but it's whatever.
But it's
It's
fun.
Yeah, it's fun, and it's just another reason for me to like practice punctuality each week. If I can, I'm there on time. Granted, I have
Hmm.
two kids that are the equivalent of like four. I have no idea. They're
The
going through
equivalent
some
of four.
they're going through some things right now. They're changing. Those cute girls I was promised are like turning into the devil. I don't know. It's Yeah, and they're exactly 2 years apart, so it's like the terrible twos never happened with my oldest, but it turned into like the she's almost 5 now, and so the jealousy thing starts to kick in where she's like, "Oh, they have
Mm.
more, this is bigger, whatever." And then her sister isn't scared to stand up for herself, which ends up in always a really fun situation where it's like, "Why are you guys hitting each other? What is going on here?" Who But luckily the youngest has stopped pulling hair now. That was her thing. Like
Mm.
she would, because she couldn't really defend herself. Like my older one she's 4, but she's about the size of a 7-year-old. She's
Wow.
huge.
Okay.
Yeah, she's huge. And the younger one is big, but she's still like in that average size of the kids she's the same age as. And so my towering older daughter would just like overpower her. And so her only defense was like 2 handfuls of hair, and one of them is actually coming away from your scalp with hair.
Hey, good for her. She found out what works.
Yeah, no, it stopped now. Now my oldest will still try to beat up on her, but she's sneaky about it because she's scared of her. So she's like a little Wolverine. She'll battle to the death. But yeah,
my
we
my
always
fiance. Yeah.
if you ever have kids, Will, you promote violence is not the answer as much as you want. It's it's to them, it's like that's their only defense. So it's like, okay, I get it. Like that kid slapped you in the
Mhm.
face. You want to hit him back or pinch him super hard, but I tell you what, it's going to make you feel better for a minute, but it's not going to fix anything because the next time he sees you, he's going to remember that, and you're going to do the same. You're always going to say that's a mean kid.
Mhm.
So,
And then violence is also an easy language to understand.
oh,
Like,
it's
oh,
absolutely easy. Get
if
away
I
from
act
me.
up in this
Yeah,
way and I get punched in the face, maybe I'll remember for next time. Maybe I won't, but maybe I'll remember for next time.
yeah. I, I don't want to be like the gentle parent, if that makes sense. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, don't do that. You shouldn't hit people. Like, no, man, if that kid slapped you, slap them back. If your sister's pulling your hair out, pull her hair. Like, pinch her, get her off of you if that's the point.
Mhm.
Because I'm not always going to be here to pull one of you off of the other one. And even when I do, the other one's got a handful of skin or a handful of hair. So, kids are crazy. But that's a whole different real world UX design experiment going on here. It's crazy. Yeah. And it's funny because
my,
that's how I calm myself down sometimes when they're being nuts. It's like, okay, this is just an experiment in human behavior, and we're going to UX the shit out of this. How can my kids still have a really good life experience? without me freaking out and like damaging them, or them damaging
Mhm.
each other to the point where like they don't grow up as friends, because who knows? Yeah. So
Right. My fiance asked me earlier today, like, hey, if we do have kids, and assuming we have like one boy, one girl, which one would you prefer first? And the best answer I could come up with was like, I don't know, which one do you think we'll need more experience for to handle properly? Like, do you think I'll need more experience to raise a girl properly or more experience to raise a boy properly? Whichever one I need more experience for, I want them second.
I would
That was my best
say,
answer.
that's tough. Because I have two, the only advice I can give you, and they're both girls, so it doesn't help with boys, but the differences I've seen between boys and girls as far as like the ages that they're in, like my youngest will scare away a boy easily in a fight. Like she won't back down. The boys in her age aren't scared to hit girls or pinch girls, so it's kind of like
Mhm.
it's a fair boxing match. You can watch it and commentary. um, but at some point, like, yeah, you don't want your kids to be bullies. You want them to be nice, but you also want them to understand. Like, I tell this to my daughters all the time. If somebody is hurting your sister, and I always say this to the older one, if somebody's hurting your sister and she cannot help herself, and you're there, like you're the strong man in this one, because you're going to tower over anybody beating her up.
Mhm.
Hopefully, like,
Mhm.
um, but there is a good old fashioned hockey team spirit about it. You got to have a defender and a bruiser, and you need somebody who looks good for the team. So yeah, no, it's really weird. As far as advice, girls are tough. They're real. I don't want to say they're tough. Okay, so will a boy pee all over your couch and think it's funny? Probably. Will a girl pee all over your couch and think it's funny? Yeah, like I've had it happen. Um, like there's really no difference. I have noticed that some boys, if they're not in a bully mentality, they're the opposite, and then they're like, I don't want to sound mean, but they're like really mama's boys, like just
Mhm.
whiny, like they could fall down off of something, nothing happens, and they cry. But now that my older daughter is almost 5, she used to be a tank. You could literally watch her fall down the floor. She smashed the bridge of her nose on a giant flower pot running across our deck. She tripped and hit the flower pot square middle of her nose and flattened it, and she had like raccoon eyes for a couple weeks. And
Oh,
she didn't even cry. She was just like a little bit
who
in
put that
shock.
flower pot there?
Yeah, like she was a little bit in shock that happened and that she stopped so abruptly. But now if she scrapes her knee funny, even with like 4 pairs of pants on, you're gonna hear tears for a couple hours,
Oh.
maybe even some wailing, and then you wonder like, what is going on? Yeah, so I think it just changes with age. So it doesn't matter which one you have first, and no experience is
Fun.
going to be yeah, it's kind of like designing a UX portfolio. Will any advice I give you, you're going to have 200 other parents giving you different advice or saying a different
Mhm.
opinion about should you have a boy or a girl first. You can't choose anyway.
Yep.
um, but yeah, no, there's no experience in the world that's going to save you, because each kid is crazily different. Like, it's insane. Sometimes I wonder like how one daughter got something. I'm like, that is not for me, and that I don't see it in your mom, but maybe I don't know. And then the other one will do similar stuff, and that's yeah. You just, if you and your wife have a kid, you got to go into it as partners. That's the only thing that's going to save you. Because call your parents, ask for advice, and it might kind of fit, but it's never going to be the exact fix for your kid. Like, it's
Right. Mhm.
just let them be themselves. You'll be fine.
I hope.
I mean, yeah, our girls in the summer, they're both like weird indigenous people sometimes. Like last year, they were there. I don't think there was a single day they weren't in our garden, and at some point you'd turn around and you're like, when did you end up naked? Where are your clothes? What is going on? So It's fun. Have fun with it. It's also really frustrating. So I don't know. There's breathing techniques work sometimes.
Mm.
Other times, just go for a walk. We see our neighbor friend going for a walk all the time with headphones on, and he's got two kids.
It's one
It's
way to
like,
calm down.
yeah, it's like the okay, I can't do anymore. I'm leaving the house for a minute, or else you'll see me on the news. So, but I had an experience like that with my wife this evening as well. Like we were in the bathroom, they weren't playing along, and then it was a sick twisted game that kids play. Like they pick games, and that's the game. Even if it's frustrating for you, it's fun for
Mm.
them. And yeah, it got to the point where it's like you're not getting ready, you're not even trying, and now you're like hiding, so I can't even get to you to get you ready for bed. And then at one point, I just like breezed past my wife and walked out of the bathroom, and she's like, "Thanks." And I was gone for maybe 5 minutes, and I came back, and I was like, "I'm sorry, but I had to like walk out of here, take a few deep breaths, go just relax. Otherwise, I was gonna start getting loud. Like I don't want to get loud."
Mhm. Mhm.
And then, yeah, but that's also comes back to the podcast and learning to get a little thick skin, I guess, in the public sphere. Like if you can survive a 2-year-old will, you'll be fine in any trolling situation.
I hope. Oh my goodness.
Nah, it'll be fun. Don't worry about which one comes first. We actually didn't know the gender of either of our children. Like we didn't care. So we just picked out random
Mm.
names, and it was like, well, if it goes, flip the coin. If it's a boy, it's this. If it's a girl, it gets that name. And then, but yeah, no, you can't predict it. I mean, you can obviously with the sex, but even that's wrong sometimes. But yeah,
Mm.
just don't worry about what one's coming first, because either way, I'm pretty sure your firstborn, in the end, they say ends up relatively like the most put together. And then
Yeah,
you
I've heard
have
that.
people like me, the middle child, where like, hey guys, I exist. Like I'm here. Do you remember that you had me? So I think two kids we're stopping. We're not having any more because they both get attention. They're both looked after. We treat them fairly. Nobody's babied. Like that's the biggest thing. It's like
Nice.
nobody is preferenced. Like, okay, if you pushed her down off of something and she fell down, she's gonna get the same treatment as if she pushed you off of something and you fell
Mm.
down. Like it's all even here. We don't care. As long as they're still
Mm.
alive at the end of the year, like that's the goal. You made it to another birthday, and
Mhm.
we couldn't keep the cactus upstairs alive, but look at we got two kids. They're breathing. They're well fed. It's good.
That's great. That's a couple years away from me, but I'm gonna remember this conversation.
You should try.
Mhm. Mhm.
Otherwise, just reach out to me. I'll give you some fun anecdotes to
Mhm.
bring home and maybe calm yourself down.
Yeah, build a design system for me. How I need to handle it.
Oh, that's actually, you know what? I'm writing this down, Will, because the parenting design system. Oh, snap. I'll cut you in on some of the
I want 10% of all royalties.
10% to Will. Okay. I wrote that down. It's not a joke.
Perfect. Thank you.
Um, well, I think that covers our episode. We were just kind of rambling. I'm really sorry. So,
But we enjoyed it, so we hope you enjoyed it too.
yeah, it was good for me. It's a good way to end the season. So, but yeah, once again, thanks for joining us here on the Frame by Frame podcast. We are taking a short hiatus after the end of our season to plan for the second season, and rearrange a few things so maybe it runs a little smoother, and hopefully we'll come back with some live podcast opportunities and video next time. Anything from you, Will? I'm out.
Thank you all for joining us this season. Thank you to all of our guests for joining us this season. We hope to chat with you again really soon and bring you some extra fun stuff.
Sweet. Well, from the Frame by Frame podcast, have a great What is that? Are we in March now? Wow. Yeah. Have a great
There,
March.
there we go.
You'll probably see us
Have a
before
great
the end
March.
of that, but just check out our frame by frame on LinkedIn. You can also email us at frame by frame xframe.uxpod@gmail.com. We'll put it in the episode description as well. And yeah, good night.